My daughter Sophia, 18, and I stood there, watching as my wife, Cassandra, and my boss, Benjamin, loaded her suitcases into his car. He had come by early Sunday morning to pick her up for a meeting in New York the next day. They needed to fly out that night for more meetings, just before a mediation. Cassandra, even at 44, still had her looks. Standing 5 feet 7 inches with striking black hair and piercing emerald eyes, she hadn't let a few extra pounds get in the way. She still had the same curves that caught everyone's attention, though. We'd married right after high school, and I worked hard to put her through college while taking online classes myself. Childbirth had never really changed her figure. After she finished law school, we moved back closer to family, already with 2 kids in tow. Sophia had been born during her first year as a practicing attorney. When I saw Benjamin, I couldn't help but feel a mix of disgust and irritation. He wore that smug smirk of his, like he was better than everyone else, and he was way too comfortable in his own skin. I almost confronted him then and there, but something held me back. I knew he wasn't worth the trouble. He and the woman at his side were off to deal with a civil case, but what they didn't know was that I knew exactly what they were really up to. I had gotten a tip from a woman named Eleanor, a total stranger to me, but she had filled in the blanks. They turned down our offer for a ride to the airport, choosing to take Benjamin's car instead. It stung not knowing when they'd be back. Physically, Benjamin and I were about the same. Similar height, close in age. He was attractive in a polished, clean-cut kind of way, but I wasn't scared to face him. I was ready for an equal confrontation if it came to that. Sophia must have sensed where my mind was going. Without a word, she stepped between me and Benjamin, gently steering me away from making a scene. "Don't," she said, and I listened, grateful she was looking out for me. We waved them off from the porch, Cassandra probably already picturing her exciting weekend in the city with Benjamin. The whole thing stunk. Cassandra's rise to associate partner 2 years ago had completely shifted the balance in our lives, and not for the better. I could see how the power had started to go to her head. It wasn't just me who noticed, though I was the only one brave enough to say it out loud. I had heard the whispers. Benjamin had a reputation, but Cassandra never let it bother her. She brushed it off like it was just office gossip, nothing more. She couldn't see what was right in front of her. To her, this affair was just a way to break free from our humdrum routine. She'd never believe it until it was too late, I thought to myself. It'll hit her hard when she realizes she's just another name on his list, I added. Sophia, now seriously concerned, asked, "Why didn't you do something, Dad? Why didn't you stop it?" I took a deep breath. Because, sweetie, if I warned her, she'd just brush it off as jealousy. You know how she is. It would have just started another pointless argument. Once her mind's made up, nothing changes it. Sophia looked at me, puzzled. Does Benjamin's wife know? Yeah, I replied. Eleanor knows everything, and so does her father. They've been waiting to catch him in the act. This isn't the first time for Benjamin. Eleanor knows about his past affairs, and she's done with it. Their kids are grown now, so she's ready to end the farce that's their marriage. Sophia seemed anxious, but she asked the next question anyway. So, are you going to forgive Mom? I didn't even have to think about it. Not this time, kiddo. I forgave her once, but now, it's different. This time, it's done. I'm moving on. I had already accepted that divorce was inevitable the moment she left. The look on Sophia's face when she heard that was one I'll never forget. She was shocked, and no wonder. She had no idea what had been going on under the surface. Learning about her mother's infidelity was a tough pill to swallow. "Dad," Sophia said softly, "you have to tell me more. What happened?" I sighed and pulled her closer. "Look, Sophia, you're the youngest, so keep this between us, okay? Before you were born, your mother had an affair. And I'm not talking a one-time thing. She kept seeing him even after she was pregnant with you. If you weren't mine, I would have left her then and there." Her eyes widened. "Who is he? Do we know him?" I hesitated, then said, "It's been 18 years since I spoke to him, but yeah, you know him. Your Uncle Henry." Sophia processed the shock of the news. She'd never understood why I always kept my distance from Henry, why I avoided family gatherings when he was around. Now it made sense. I tried to lighten the moment. "Maybe you should text Uncle about Cassandra's trip and their hotel. You know, Just to stir the pot a little, I said, half joking. Sophia didn't respond, and I could tell the weight of everything was settling in. I left her to think while I headed into the kitchen to make coffee. I flicked through the local paper, looking at potential rentals and sales. With Sophia off to university, Cassandra could stay in the house until she graduated. But I had to get things in motion before she came back. I knew the judge would put the kids first, and that would likely leave me pissed off and resentful. Sophia's phone rang, and she spoke softly for a while before coming back to me. "Uncle Henry wants to talk," she said. "He knows about everything, and he sympathizes with you." After all these years, I figured it might be time to hear him out. Cassandra's actions had made me rethink a lot of things. I had stayed in the marriage for the kids, trying to keep the family together. But now, everything had changed. I grabbed a bottle of Jack Daniels and asked Sophia to drive me. We had a lot to figure out. As we ate, Mom called both Sophia and Henry wife. By the time they showed up, we were starting to sober up. Rebecca, who had married Henry after the separation, looked confused when she saw us together. "Okay, so you two are back on good terms?" she asked. "After all this time, we deserve to know what went down." I started to speak, but Henry nudged me, an old childhood gesture telling me to stay quiet. He had always been the better one at weaving stories to get us out of trouble, but this time, I was wrong. Cassandra and we had an affair while she was pregnant with Sophia, Henry admitted. "It was my fault. I was immature and stupid, and when my younger brother found out, he saw me as dead to him." Dad, shocked by the truth behind our split, let out a curse. "Damn, if I were Clinton, I'd have taken you out myself." "What made you confess?" Mom asked. "Cassandra flew out to New York with her boss," I replied. "They only booked one hotel room for the whole trip, which raised a lot of red flags. Eleanor, Benjamin's wife, has hired private investigators on them." Sophia, now fully aware of what was going on, looked at me with understanding. "I should have let you confront him," she said, locking eyes with me. There was a moment of silence, then I spoke again. "Since Cassandra is staying in the house until Sophia graduates, I need to find a new place before she gets back." Sophia was firm. "I won't stay with Mom," she said. "Where you go, I go. We're sticking together." Her words were final, as always. She meant it, no matter the consequences. Mom called to Sophia. "Come upstairs with me." They disappeared for a while, but when they returned, they'd made their decision. We'd be moving in with them. For now, all we needed were our clothes. On the way home, Sophia gave me a look. "You need to stop defending Mom, Dad. We're adults now." She knew exactly what she was doing in New York with Benjamin, thinking she wouldn't get caught. That says a lot about how she sees us. That Monday night, we began packing up our things. We each grabbed what we could: Sophia's favorite things, my rocking chair, and Cassandra's makeup table with the mirror. Cassandra kept texting me throughout the week with updates, though progress was slow. Eleanor finally called, suggesting we meet Thursday night at Logan's Roadhouse around 8. I showed up in work clothes, without the tie, and saw her right away by her white scarf. I introduced myself. She was stunning, several years younger than me. Long blonde hair, soft blue eyes, and a slender figure that was modestly dressed. She explained she was a kindergarten teacher, which made sense given her attire. I worked as an HR manager at a nursing home. Eleanor mentioned they would be in New York for the weekend, having completed about 70% of the settlement work. When they return, they'll be served with papers, she told me, and then asked how I was holding up. "It's better this time," I said. We talked openly about it, unlike last time when it wasn't even intentional. My older brother was the first to know. 18 years ago, before my youngest was born. We didn't speak for 18 years until we made amends last Sunday, thanks to Sophia. Eleanor chuckled when I mentioned how my daughter made us work through everything, even if it meant the worst hangover I'd had in years. What made it worse was our dad catching us, like a couple of teenagers, and dragging us home, I added. Eleanor laughed, but then commented on how comforting it must have been to be with parents. I told her that Sophia and I would be staying with my parents for now, keeping only the essentials. I was planning to keep Cassandra's number active until Sunday, then block her for good. Before we parted ways, Eleanor and I shared a dance at a nearby bar. Despite everything, I found myself in good spirits when I returned home, though Sophia was already waiting to quiz me. She seemed to know everything. The next day, Sophia kept teasing me. "Daddy's got a new girlfriend." She was joking, but I knew there was a hint of truth to it. We had a great Sunday dinner, and my parents were already making themselves comfortable. It felt good to be together, and Mom was happy to cook for us again. It was nice to sit down and eat a meal that left no leftovers. At 1 a.m., a call jolted me awake. Eleanor confirmed that Cassandra and Benjamin were asleep when the hotel detective entered their room. The whole thing was filmed, and Eleanor sent me a temporary copy of the video. I got up, dressed, and went downstairs to make some tea. My mom joined me as I finished preparing my cup. "Is the water still hot?" she asked. I got up to prepare her tea, and as I did, I showed her the video on my phone. Her expression shifted as she watched. There was no denying what we saw. Cassandra and Benjamin were undressed under the sheets, their voices full of surprise. They looked like deer caught in headlights. Mom immediately saved a copy to her own phone. "We're done with Cassandra," she said, her voice firm. I couldn't help but smile at the look on her face when she heard about the civil suit. "Sophia and I blocked her number tonight," I told Mom. "We knew they'd be served with lawsuits soon." Mom took their phones, and I helped her through the process. Sharing tea with my mother in the quiet of the night brought back old memories. Later, I instructed the receptionist at the nursing home to block all calls from Cassandra. I had no intention of speaking to her. Around 11, the receptionist called me. "She's calling every 20 minutes. What do we do?" "What's your mobile number?" I asked. When she gave it to me, I told her, "I'll send you a video clip. If she calls again, ask her for her cell number. If she gives it to you, send her the clip and let her know Sophia and I got it last night." That was the last I heard from her that day. Before leaving, the receptionist confirmed, "I did what you asked." Once I sent it, the calls stopped. "If you or Sophia need anything, just let me know, okay?" I nodded, thankful. "Thanks, boss," she said, and I kept it to myself. While my mom cooked and Sophia helped, I filled her in on what had happened at work. Then I got a text from an unknown number, supposedly from my mom, asking me to call her. It didn't take long to figure out it was likely Benjamin's number. "I think your brothers will reach out around 8 tonight," I told Sophia. "Your mom will probably call them. They're at the house, and if they notice we're gone, they'll be surprised." I left a note for Mom, telling her she'd have to make Benjamin move out since his wife kicked him out. Cassandra would never admit anything in front of the boys. "Hey, Dad, let's ditch our phones for a while," Sophia suggested. "That way, my brothers will have to call Mom to figure out what's going on." So, we turned off our phones and enjoyed a peaceful evening, but not for everyone else. Later, we heard that my sons had gone to our old house. They noticed my chair was missing and started searching. It became clear Sophia and I had moved out when they found her note in the kitchen. They called us, but we didn't answer, making them more frustrated. Their mother claimed she didn't know what the note meant. Eventually, they turned to Uncle Henry for answers. He hinted that maybe I didn't want to be found, given what Cassandra had done. They were shocked but didn't question how Henry knew. In the meantime, the news of the breakup spread quickly through the family. By the end of the workday, my secretary told me Ethan, my eldest, had called. He got straight to the point. "What's up, Dad? Where do you and Sophia live now?" "Not much has changed," I said. "What was wrong before is right now, and vice versa." "Let's skip the philosophy, Dad," Ethan said. "Just give me the facts." "Check your texts," I told him. "That'll answer your question. Forward it to Logan, and if you want to talk, come by Grandpa's after dinner." I ended the call, sent him the video, and told Sophia. Within 10 minutes, Ethan replied, "Wow, I'll be at Grandpa's by 8. My parents excused themselves, leaving me and the kids to talk about the situation. The boys weren't taking their mother's actions seriously. "We all mess up, Dad," Ethan said. "Remember how many times you forgave us growing up?" Sophia's anger flared. "You may be my brothers, but you're both idiots," she spat. "It wasn't an accident. Mom and Benjamin planned the whole thing." The hotel room was booked for Mr. and Mrs. Deuce Benjamin Trescott a week before they left. The look on my sons' faces was unforgettable as Sophia laid it all out. "We watched Mom leave the house knowing she was going to cheat," Sophia said. She made him pick her up, looking all nervous. Dad offered to take her to the airport, but no. She wanted to leave with him, flaunting it. We were probably the punchline of their jokes. Sophia went on, bitterly. She didn't know we knew. She didn't realize we saw right through them. I tried to explain why I hadn't intervened. She would have just lied, Sophia. She would have denied it, made it worse. Your mother made it clear she was leaving. This wasn't a mistake. It was planned, I said. Dad and I knew 2 weeks before she left. Benjamin's wife warned us, and we got the video an hour after they were served. The boys need to understand, I said, frustration rising. Your mother didn't just betray me. She betrayed all of us. I'm seeing a doctor tomorrow to get tested for STDs. All my children stared at me, wide-eyed. I need to do this, I said. I can't be sure she didn't have other lovers on the side. This may be the first time she's been caught, but her business trips raised too many questions. Logan frowned. Dad, you can't be serious. There's no way Mom had other lovers. I raised an eyebrow. Given what we know, can you trust her to tell the truth? I asked. Facts matter more than belief. If I test negative for an STD, that'll support what you think. They stayed silent, and I excused myself. I need a coffee, I muttered, heading for the kitchen. My parents had been listening and agreed with my approach. Nathan, you're handling this wisely, my father said. Her job and travel history make it plausible she had other partners. Mediation meetings and business trips could provide opportunities. Even if she had separate phone lines, you can't rule out contact between them. I nodded. In a world where one truth can be another's lie, I can't just take her word for it. Just then, my phone rang. I stepped out to take the call. Hi, Eleanor. What's going on? She told me she'd talked to Benjamin. It didn't go well. He doesn't understand why she wants a divorce, Eleanor said. He thinks she should forgive and forget. But she made it clear. She doesn't want him involved in our daughter's life. Benjamin didn't seem to get it. He has no idea the damage he's caused, Eleanor said. Cassandra's struggling now that she's unemployed. They'll be back Thursday to settle everything. I blocked her number for Sophia and me, I said. I also told the receptionist to reject her calls. She begged me to stop, so I sent her the video you gave me. Now she knows we're aware. Must be tough for her to lose control. Eleanor informed Benjamin that his belongings were in the garage until he picked them up, and I changed the locks just to gauge his reaction. I also had a heart-to-heart with my kids, explaining why I was getting tested. Do you honestly think your mother would confess if there were others? I asked them. Sophia and I kept taking things one step at a time as we moved out. We finished our conversation and wished each other good night. When I walked into the kitchen, everyone's eyes were on me. I'm taking tomorrow off, I said. Got a lawyer appointment at 9. I want those two served with lawsuits as soon as they land Thursday. My son's eyes filled with tears, realizing how serious things had become. My father spoke up. Benjamin won't be the first, but he'll be the last. I'd have handled the first one differently. That's not true, Logan protested. Mom denied it until we showed her the video. You're clueless, my mother interjected. Ever wonder why your father never spoke to Uncle Henry until now? They patched things up Sunday night. Sophia added. Henry confessed. He admitted Dad didn't deserve it, but he did. I put the kettle on, giving my children time to process. They didn't leave until the kettle was boiling. With Sophia in bed, I took a moment to talk with my parents. They'll be watching you, my mother warned. How you handle this will guide them. I understand, I said. I'll stay composed and let the lawyers handle it. I can't change the past. Besides, it's beyond my control unless I take drastic measures. That's the right attitude, my father said. But in my eyes, Cassandra isn't worth risking jail time. I agree, I affirmed, recalling Henry's sentiment. My father beamed with pride. You're a better man than I was at your age. Your mother and I raised you well. At the lawyer's office, I explained the situation. She was especially interested when I mentioned my wife's employer. Did you know I once worked there? She asked. They have a strict code of ethics, which I still abide by. We might consider suing the firm as well. She suggested we might not gain much beyond legal fees, but the lawsuit would put pressure on them. Let's proceed, I agreed. They're due back from New York on the earliest flight Thursday. After paying her fee, she expressed optimism. This feels like David facing Goliath, I said to her, thinking about the company's size and reach. The family doctor was surprised when I asked for STI tests. Though unexpected, he agreed it was a smart move. Unbeknownst to me, Ethan had already told his mother about the tests. He explained that, given the suspicions about Uncle Henry and Benjamin, there were too many uncertainties about additional partners. He reassured his mom not to worry, given her own history of deception. It's best to let things settle before talking to her, Ethan advised. Meanwhile, the company my wife worked for was facing fines, and my lawyer pursued a $10 million settlement, highlighting the partners' dismissal as an admission of guilt. When Cassandra and Benjamin returned on Thursday, they faced procedural formalities. My wife took a taxi home alone. A call from the doctor revealed I had a mild STD that required reporting. Cassandra was legally obligated to disclose her sexual history. The lawsuit made headlines at 6 p.m., exposing their actions. I updated Sophia during her classes, and she informed her brothers. Later, over dinner, Sophia teased me about my date. Eleanor greeted me warmly at Red Lobster, both of us dressed casually. "Eleanor finds you impressive," she chuckled. "My dad sees you as a rock star. If that doesn't humble Benjamin, nothing will." "The lawyer I hired sees this as payback," I said. "She's using her HR expertise to sue them for policy breaches." "I wish I could see their faces tomorrow," Eleanor mused. "It won't be a good day for them." At the table, she handed me an envelope. "These are statements from 5 of Benjamin's former subordinates," she said. "They detail how he coerced them into satisfying his carnal desires." "That strengthens my case," I said, glancing through the papers. Originally, the lawyer thought winning enough to cover her fees would be a success, but now it seemed we had the chance to expose a broader pattern of misconduct. Eleanor and I bonded over our shared experiences, and I was grateful for her support. By the time I returned home close to midnight, I reflected on everything that had happened since Cassandra left. As I was making tea, I noticed Sophia in tears. I made her a cup, too, knowing that things would never be the same. I told Sophia it was okay to cry, that it was part of the healing process. "I'm surprised you held it together this long," I said, holding her as she let the tears out. By the time we finished our tea, she was calmer. She asked about my dinner with Eleanor, and I explained that it felt like the beginning of a promising friendship. Sophia had more questions about Eleanor, which I answered as best I could. Later, I delivered the statements to my lawyer, and she proposed turning it into a class action lawsuit to seek larger compensation for all the women involved. I agreed and wished her luck. I heard from a friend that Cassandra and Benjamin had a rough day, despite their successful settlement. There was no celebration, just cold silence. I felt heartened by the support I received from colleagues and senior management. On my way home, I withdrew $1,000 in cash and surprised my mother with it. She gave me a knowing look. "This is a one-time thing, agreed?" she asked. I nodded, thankful for her understanding. Cassandra returned home to an empty house, feeling like an outcast after a day of hostility. Both she and Benjamin were unwelcome. She couldn't understand how Nathan found a former employee to represent him, someone with insider knowledge of the legal maneuvers. It was clear he had stacked the deck against the firm from the start. Fixing herself a rye cocktail, Cassandra sat down to read the divorce petition. She realized both Nathan and Sophia had known about their affair and their plans when they left together. Now, it was time to face the reality of her broken marriage. Regret began to sink in as she messaged Nathan and Sophia, hoping for some space to talk things through. But she knew it was too late to undo the damage. Ethan's words echoed in her mind, "You've made things worse for everyone." As she went through the mail, a letter from the health department revealed that I had contracted an STD. Overcome with emotion, Cassandra broke down in tears. The nightmare was only getting worse. Meanwhile, Benjamin Hale sat brooding in a dimly lit bar, nursing his sorrows over Eleanor's divorce filing. A fight broke out nearby, and in the chaos, Benjamin was struck 3 times in the face. The assailant's words echoed Nathan's resentment, but Benjamin failed to recognize the deeper meaning behind the attack. Back at home, I had a difficult conversation with Ethan that Saturday afternoon. He was stubborn, having just consoled his distraught mother, Cassandra. He still insisted I should take her back for the sake of everyone's peace, despite everything that had happened. After listening to him patiently, I finally asked, Ethan, imagine if you were married and found out your wife was being unfaithful. Would you still tell me to take her back? He fell silent. Does that mean you think I'm insignificant, someone to be walked on? His shocked expression made him realize the gravity of the situation. If you can't respect my decisions, don't come back, I said, leaving him to reflect on my words. His youthful impulsiveness mirrored my past mistakes, and now he had to face the consequences. Ethan sought counsel from Uncle Henry, who shared his own story of youthful folly. Your mother pursued me, Henry revealed. It led to 18 years of separation from my brother. There are always two sides to every story. Your dad is right. Your mother didn't get the STD from Benjamin. She brought it home. She saw your father as insignificant after everything he did for the family. Henry warned, fix this, or you'll risk losing your father forever. Your mother had her chance. At the firm where Cassandra and Benjamin worked, Monday morning came with triumph. My lawsuit was dropped, and they were lauded for their successful settlements. Benjamin, despite his injuries, shared the ordeal with Cassandra privately. Later, I found Cassandra by my car. She was worn out and weary. Back off, she demanded. Benjamin has his own troubles because of your vengeful streak. I have no idea what you're talking about, I replied. He got attacked. Cassandra insisted. The guy said he's your friend, and he'll keep doing it. I couldn't help but laugh. If I knew who did it, I'd buy them a whiskey, I said. Your lover got off lightly. If it were me, he'd be dead. Just then, a text from Eleanor arrived, urgent and demanding my immediate presence. Another followed, with her address. I quickly replied to Eleanor's message, letting her know I was on my way. As I left, Cassandra stood there, her voice sharp and biting. You're colder and crueler than I've ever seen, she said. I stopped and turned to face her. Enough, I said firmly. Get your lawyer, and let's finalize this divorce. Without waiting for a response, I got in the car and drove off, finally done with her manipulation and self-pity. When I arrived at Eleanor's house, I found her looking upset. What's wrong? I asked, approaching her with concern. How can I help? She sighed and revealed. Your dad's friend had Benjamin punched, and he used your name. My grin said it all, a reaction that seemed to ease some of her tension. Aren't you angry or worried? She asked, still watching me closely. If I knew where he lived, I'd send him a thank you bottle of whiskey, I quipped without hesitation. Eleanor let out a small laugh, and I couldn't help but hug her briefly. She didn't resist, and when I let go and started to apologize, she surprised me with a light kiss on the cheek. They're inside, waiting to talk things out with you, she said, leading me by the hand into the kitchen. As we passed by a bedroom, her daughters, Amelia and Isabel, peeked out, giggling when I winked at them. They winked back, their playful spirits lifting the mood. In the kitchen, Eleanor's father greeted me. A tall, imposing man, he had a calm yet commanding presence. Extending my hand, I said with a smile, if it were legal, I'd send you a large bottle of whiskey as thanks. He shook my hand firmly. Think before doing anything foolish, he advised. My father's advice saved me a lot of trouble at your age. His words carried weight, and I nodded, grateful for his guidance. Once introductions were done, he left with a young man who had apparently been involved in the earlier incident. Eleanor's daughters, Amelia, 10, and Isabel, 8, introduced themselves more formally now, eagerly telling me about their favorite restaurant, a pizza place called Zizzy's. Kneeling to their level, I asked, would you let me treat you and your mom to dinner there? Their eyes lit up, and they immediately agreed. I just need to call my mom to let her know I won't be home for dinner, I added. What for? They asked, curious. To let her know, I chuckled, dialing as they giggled. Their amusement lasted until we reached Zizzy's, where they darted ahead as soon as we walked in. While Eleanor grabbed some pizza, I stayed at the table with the girls. Amelia leaned in, curious. Are you Mom's boyfriend? She asked. I smiled. Just a friend, I said, unsure of where this was going. Did you go on a date? She persisted. Not yet, I teased. But I'd need someone's permission first. Whose? Isabel asked. Yours and your sister's, I replied, earning giggles. You can, Amelia said confidently. Mom says she likes you. When Eleanor returned, she found us laughing. Her smile softened, clearly touched by the connection I'd made with her daughters. After dinner, we returned to their house, where I thanked them at the door. As I prepared to leave, Eleanor called out. Turning back, I found her on the porch, looking thoughtful. Before I could speak, she kissed me, a warm and unexpected gesture. Amelia said you were going to ask me out, she said, laughing. I smiled, explaining the conversation I'd had with her daughters while she was busy. We ended up sitting on the porch, talking like teenagers about our feelings and shared uncertainties. Despite our mutual interest, we agreed to take things slowly. Before I left, we made plans to take the girls to the town fair the following Saturday. When I returned home, Sophia was quick to notice my upbeat mood. Looks like you had a good time, Dad, she remarked. I filled her and my parents in on the day's events, including the absurdity of Cassandra asking me to back off from Benjamin after everything that had happened. My dad found it hilarious. The next day, Friday, my lawyer launched a new lawsuit against the firm, targeting 4 senior partners and representing 16 female victims. The claims were hand-delivered to the partners' homes, causing immediate upheaval. 3 of them weren't even allowed to return to their homes after their spouses learned the details. Meanwhile, Cassandra faced backlash from her own family. My mom, ever the instigator, sent emails to many of Cassandra's relatives, detailing the affair, my STD diagnosis, and the allegations of misconduct during her business trips. Cassandra's reputation was unraveling further with each revelation. On Saturday at the fair, Eleanor revealed her fear of heights, so I ended up riding the Ferris wheel with her daughters. They loved it, laughing and pointing out the view, while Eleanor waved to us from below. Later, as we grabbed some food, we ran into my brother Henry and his family. The kids hit it off immediately, leaving us adults to catch up. Henry and Rebecca invited Eleanor and her girls to a family gathering on Sunday. Eleanor agreed, though her daughters would be with their father for the first time since his return from New York. By the evening, the girls were exhausted. After Eleanor bathed and tucked them in, she received a call from Benjamin. Apparently, he couldn't pick up the kids because he was in the emergency room. He'd been punched again. Eleanor shook her head in disbelief as she shared the news with me. Seems like someone's not done teaching him lessons, I said with a wry smile. Despite the chaos surrounding us, I felt a strange sense of peace, knowing I was moving forward with people who truly cared. Eleanor reassured Benjamin that I wasn't behind the incident, explaining I'd spent the day at the fair with her and the kids. Still, Benjamin wasn't pleased. Reluctantly, I left Eleanor's place around 9 p.m., knowing we'd officially start dating the next day. Sunday afternoon, I picked up Eleanor and her daughters and headed to Henry's home, where everyone had gathered. My parents, Sophia, with her date, and Henry's family were all there, making it the first time I'd stepped into my brother's home since he got married. Rebecca was thrilled to welcome us, introducing Eleanor and her daughters to everyone with her usual warmth. They were quickly accepted, and the gathering took on a festive tone. Later, my eldest son, Ethan, asked if we could talk privately. We moved to the edge of Henry's property, away from the commotion. Dad, I messed up, Ethan admitted, his tone heavy with regret. I fell for Mom's manipulation. She tricked me. Uncle Henry and my colleagues filled me in last week. What did you learn from this? I asked, genuinely curious about his takeaway. Ethan sighed. When it comes to family, sometimes it's best to keep your distance. No matter what you do, you might only make things worse. People have to figure things out on their own time. You're right, I acknowledged. But it's tough to step back when you care. Your mom and I will talk someday, but not anytime soon, not after how she's acted. Her behavior? Ethan asked. Yes, I replied. Actions speak louder than words. Look at Eleanor. She endured a loveless marriage until she felt ready to raise her daughters alone. She showed patience and strength, waiting for the right moment. That reflects her character. Your mom's behavior, on the other hand, shocked your sister and me with its cruelty. Despite her words, her actions often contradict them. As my grandfather used to say, I added, if I'm not worth the truth, then you're not worth lying to. Ethan hesitated, then asked, what else did she lie about? That's a question we might never fully answer, I said. There's no use dwelling on the past, son. All we can do is learn from it and move forward. Ethan managed a small smile. I'm really impressed by Eleanor, Dad. But the more I hear about Benjamin and Mom, the more I think they belong together. Sophia approached us then, noting, your conversation is drawing attention. Maybe save it for later? We're finished, sis, Ethan assured her. I just needed to apologize to Dad. With that, he walked away, leaving Sophia looking curious. It's just a case of him saying the wrong thing, I explained. It's good to see him owning up to it. As the afternoon went on, Henry and Rebecca hosted a delightful dinner. Rebecca captured several candid moments with her camera, including one where Isabel insisted on keeping an eye on me. When the inevitable water fight broke out, I eagerly joined, though it left me soaked. Resting in a lounge chair to dry off, Isabel climbed into my lap and fell asleep. Across the yard, I noticed Rebecca and Eleanor talking, likely about the bond forming between me and her daughters. My father joined me, gesturing to Isabel. This little one seems to have chosen you, he said with a grin. Just be careful. Make sure revenge on Benjamin isn't your motive. I recounted my relationship with Eleanor, from her first call to where we were now. He nodded, his expression thoughtful. I should have trusted my instincts from the start, he admitted. Then, after a pause, he added, your mother asked me to have this conversation with you. Whatever path you choose, know you have our support. Thanks, Dad, I said, grateful. We chatted about society for a while, discussing shifting values and the state of the media. My father remarked on the hypocrisy of modern political narratives. The media's become a propaganda tool, he said. It's tough to find honesty in real life, and people are too dense to see through it. His words resonated, though we soon returned to lighter topics. The gathering wound down with shared laughs and promises to meet again soon. On Monday, while I was in my office, a detective came by to discuss the ongoing issue with Benjamin Hale. It took nearly an hour to explain what I knew and provide a list of women whose spouses had discovered Benjamin's affairs. Officer, I suggest you talk to Diana Carter, I said. She can provide a more comprehensive list. The detective seemed surprised at the extent of the situation. It's been 6 weeks since I learned about their relationship, I explained. Benjamin's wife, Eleanor, called to inform me of their plans. It's been at least 4 weeks since they went on a romantic trip together. Since then, Eleanor and I have grown closer, trying to navigate a relationship that's entirely new for both of us. It certainly paints a different picture, the detective said, his tone contemplative. Benjamin Hale claims you're to blame for ruining his marriage, but it seems his actions are what caused the damage. I smirked. Benjamin seems like the type to deflect responsibility onto anyone but himself. The detective nodded in agreement. It's clear he has his reasons for accusing you, but from what I've gathered, they stem more from guilt than anything else. As he left, I felt a sense of closure beginning to form. For the first time in months, I saw the path ahead more clearly, with Eleanor by my side and my family starting to heal. After the detective left, I called Diana Carter to update her. She wasn't surprised. Benjamin's the type to set others up, she said. She believed he had orchestrated her dismissal from the firm and was likely trying to manipulate the situation again. Diana also informed me that Cassandra had finally hired a lawyer. When I returned home to my parents, I learned it was my mother's letter to Cassandra's relatives that had pushed her to give up. Until then, Cassandra had clung to the hope that we could work things out. Once I'd calmed down, I realized Cassandra probably thought I'd sent the letter out of spite. It wasn't my style, but I didn't feel obligated to correct her assumption. On Wednesday, Sophia and I took Eleanor and her daughters to dinner at Olive Garden. My sons joined us, making it a lively gathering. During the meal, I mentioned that Cassandra had finally retained a lawyer to handle her divorce. Eleanor's daughters seemed drawn to Sophia, hanging on her every word, which she seemed to enjoy. Overall, Eleanor and I considered the evening a success. 2 months passed since our last family meeting. On a Friday afternoon, I found myself sitting next to Diana outside Judge Donald McDonald's courtroom. Across the hall sat Cassandra and her lawyer, who happened to work at her old firm. We'd already agreed on property division, as there was no mortgage on the house. Cassandra would buy out my share based on the current appraisal and give me half of our joint savings. When we were called before the judge, we confirmed the agreement, finalizing the divorce. Outside, as I was heading to the parking lot, Cassandra stopped me. "I ruined myself," she said. "I finally admitted my behavior to our sons. Sophia still refuses to talk to me because she thinks I did it all on purpose. I wish I'd realized sooner the message I was sending." I looked at her evenly. I'd accept that explanation from Sophia because she's young and inexperienced. From you, it just sounds self-centered. Without another word, I left. Eleanor's divorce was already finalized. She got everything she could from Benjamin, who was ordered to pay $1,000 a month in child support, $500 for each daughter until they turned 18, and cover half their post-secondary education costs. Their house was to be sold, with the profits split equally. Benjamin had left the firm and moved to another city to start his own business. Word had it that the frequent, unexpected encounters with fists wore him down. With his share of the company, though, he was financially set for life. My parents invited Eleanor and her daughters over for dinner. What I didn't know was that they'd also invited her parents. Given how things were progressing between Eleanor and me, my parents felt it was time to start building bridges with her family. Dinner was warm and lively, with conversations flowing easily. Afterward, as we relaxed at the formal dining table, used for the first time in years, I stood up, pushed back my chair, and got down on one knee. Pulling out the ring box, I asked, "Eleanor, will you take a second chance and marry me?" Eleanor, completely shocked, managed to say, "Yes." That's when the real celebration began. My mom wasted no time calling Henry, Rebecca, and my two sons to share the news. Within half an hour, they'd all arrived, adding to the joyful chaos. Amidst the excitement, I noticed Isabel sitting on the floor, quietly crying. Concerned, I walked over and sat down next to her. She climbed into my lap without hesitation. "What's wrong, baby?" I asked softly. "Nothing," she said, tears still streaming. "I'm just happy that you're going to be my dad." I looked over at Eleanor, who had tears in her eyes. I think she could see mine, too. Standing up, I carried Isabel over to her mother. Everyone seemed to understand how special this moment was. Amelia joined us, standing next to me. "Dad," she said shyly, "when Mom and you get married, will we take your last name too?" "As soon as the court allows," I assured her. My father chimed in, "Amelia and Isabel, from now on, you can call us grandparents, okay?" The girls lit up at the thought of spending time on the farm. My father promised to teach them to ride horses in no time. Later, in private, Eleanor asked me how I planned to convince Benjamin to let me adopt her daughters and change their last names. "Leave it to me," I said confidently. About a month later, I showed up unexpectedly at Benjamin's office. His secretary hesitated, but eventually told me to go in. Closing the door behind me, I saw a man who looked much different than the confident attorney I'd once known. His face, still healing from multiple punches, bore visible signs of his recent encounters. Benjamin's glare said it all. "What do you want?" he asked coldly. I stood firm. "I want to adopt Eleanor's daughters and give them my last name. That's it." He leaned back, wincing slightly. "Why should I let you?" "Because you've already walked out of their lives," I said evenly. "They deserve a father who's present and responsible. It's not about you anymore, Benjamin. It's about them." His expression hardened, but he didn't argue. "I'll think about it." I knew that was the best I'd get for now. As I left, I couldn't help but feel a sense of closure. Benjamin could blame me all he wanted for his failures, but the truth was clear. He'd made his own bed. Now it was time for me to focus on building a better future with Eleanor and the girls. "I think you've heard that Eleanor and I are getting married," I said as Benjamin looked up. His face went pale, clearly suspecting me of orchestrating his injuries. "What do you want?" he asked nervously. "I need your permission, in the form of a legal document, to adopt your daughters so they can take my last name," I explained. "This isn't just for me." Amelia asked her mother and me if she and Isabel could have my name. "It has to be done legally, recognizing both of us as their fathers." Benjamin glared at me. Why should I agree? This will get you away from me for good, I said bluntly. Otherwise, we'll be seeing a lot of each other. It took him half an hour to draft and print the document. His secretary, a notary, certified it. I wasn't surprised by his reluctance. Benjamin hadn't seen his daughters since he left for New York. Eleanor had told me he'd only married her because of family pressure when she got pregnant. Later that day, I arrived at the kindergarten where Eleanor taught. Since I wasn't known there, I asked the office staff to call her. She came in, surprised to see me. Eleanor, I began, handing her an envelope. I made a promise to your daughters on the day of our engagement. This will help us fulfill it. She opened the envelope and read the document, her eyes filling with tears. How did you manage this? She asked. Benjamin still thinks I'm responsible for his face-meeting fists, I replied. I used that fear to our advantage. I thought we could make it so Amelia and Isabel legally take my last name on our wedding day. Eleanor smiled, her voice trembling. Sophia told me the night we got engaged that you always keep your word, especially to kids. Do you think Diana Carter will handle the adoption papers? I asked. Pulling out my phone, I added, I can call her office now to set an appointment. The school secretary, overhearing us, asked, Have you two set a date yet? Eleanor smiled again. Not yet. Nathan wouldn't commit until he found a way to convince Benjamin to let him adopt the girls. He wanted the kids to get what they wanted when we say our vows. That afternoon, we met Diana, who was thrilled for us. She prepared the necessary documents, which were filed that same day. Within a week, the court approved the adoption and name change. All that remained was deciding when it would take effect. We chose our wedding day. At a family meeting, we finalized our plans. On Sunday, we gathered at Henry's home for a potluck brunch. Eleanor brought Boston baked beans, and the mood was lively. After the greetings, Eleanor's father asked, What's new? We're happy to announce that in 2 weeks, 6 days before Christmas, 2 big things will happen, I said. First, Eleanor and I will exchange vows. Second, the adoption of Amelia and Isabel will be completed, and they'll officially take the name Foster. Eleanor added, For our honeymoon, we're taking the girls to either Disneyland or Disney World next summer. The room erupted in cheers. During a quiet moment, Amelia climbed into my lap and said softly, Thank you, Dad. For what? I asked, touched. For loving us enough to keep your word, she said. I was speechless, holding her close. Across the room, I caught Eleanor's tearful gaze and knew she saw the emotion in my eyes too. Later, in private, Eleanor asked how I planned to convince Benjamin to finalize the adoption. Leave it to me, I said confidently. A month later, I arrived unannounced at Benjamin's new office. His secretary hesitated, but eventually let me in. Benjamin, still recovering from his injuries, looked worn down. What do you want now? He asked. I want to adopt Amelia and Isabel. That's it, I said plainly. Why should I let you? He asked coldly. You've already stepped out of their lives, I replied. They deserve a father who's present and responsible. This is for them. After a long pause, Benjamin finally said, Fine, do what you want. I left his office feeling relieved. Benjamin could blame me all he wanted, but his failures were his own. My focus was on building a loving, stable future for Eleanor, Amelia, Isabel, and me, a family bound by trust and love.